is Dr. Blake Barnes. I work here at Tiger Pediatrics, and I know that you might have just heard recently Dr. Jacobs talk about colds and treating colds and things like that. And I was going to talk about how to distinguish a cold from a sinus infection, which is often one of the questions that we run into. Many of the visits we have are, we've been coughing for 2 weeks. You know, is this really still appropriate to be a cold, or has this turned into something else? And it feels like it's kind of an art that we're going through sometimes, but there is actually some guidelines out there, so these might be helpful on deciding if it's a good idea to bring your child in to get looked at. Of course, we're always happy to see anybody at any time, but these are some guidelines on when we are suspicious that a cold has turned into something else. So of course, first off, regular colds, you'll have thick, gunky stuff coming out of your nose. You can be coughing really bad for several days, all the way through the night, all the way through the day. It's very interfering. It can be sinus pressure and everything else. What often distinguishes a cold, which that would all be okay for a cold, from a sinus infection is really how long it lasts. Is that if you have 10 or more days of a constant wet cough that isn't improving at all, especially associated with sinus pressure in your face, or of course little kids can't tell you that, but gunky stuff coming out of the nose, then that makes us think of a sinus infection. So colds can last easily up to a week. And a few days after that, you know, we give it a little bit of a mulligan, and then at 10 days is really a good cutoff for when the benefits of antibiotics would sometimes outweigh the risks. So 10 days of constant wet cough or constant cold type symptoms without any improvement would be one reason. And if it is starting to improve, it'll often get better on its own. So it is important that it's 10 days of constant wet cough without any improvement. And then the others would be a cold that started off, and a few days goes by and it starts to get better, and then all of a sudden new symptoms. And in people who can feel it, like teenagers, especially when there's a lot of sinus pressure or a new fever, those would all be things. So a double worsening is another way that we sometimes think about a sinus infection. The caveat to that is a second cold before you get over the first cold can look just like that, so it can be hard to distinguish. And then the third, this is probably the least applied, but it's when there's severe symptoms, which would be defined as a high fever, say 102 or above, for 3 or more days, associated with really bad congestion, runny nose, wet cough. If it's really severe symptoms, that can look just like a flu as well. But if it's not flu, then that could also be a sinus infection. So those would be 3 times that I would definitely want to bring someone to take a peek. Is 10 days of constant, unremitting symptoms that are not improving at all. Severe symptoms for 3 days, or a double worsening in the initial symptoms. And so I hope that helps you guys know when is best to come in. But like I said, if you have questions about anything, or if there's ear pain and you're wondering about an ear infection, those are other reasons to bring kids in. So we're happy to see them at any time, but maybe these will help you guys know when it's definitely ideal to come in.